Good night and good morning to everyone. This is update for May 17, 2022, day 83 of the war, end of the date update. As always, we split our discussion into two pieces. One is just general or strategic topics, and then walks through the front line. So for those who are here just for the front line, as a heads up, there is essentially no changes today. The only sort of update is that Ukrainian bridgehead in Lyman was split into two pieces, which is probably not a good sign overall. That means that it's gonna get the both pieces will be cleaned up relatively soon, given the situation. And in addition, 61st Naval Infantry Brigade we finally located where it exactly fighting, and it's next to Avdiivka, so here west of Donetsk. So now let's switch to strategic topics, and let's discuss a couple items. First of all, tank production or armored vehicle production in Russia. So, and then related to this, there was a question from one of the viewers. Russia introduced their new sort of fighting vehicle called Terminator to the battlefield, and it was spotted somewhere in Donbass, and we're going to discuss that as a sort of part of this conversation about the manufacturing capacity and tank production in Russia. So the main tank production facility is located here. It's called Ural Vagon Zavod, and it's in a town called Nizhny Tagil. It's about 80 to 100 kilometers north of a large city called Yekaterinburg. And Yekaterinburg is a third largest city in Russia after Moscow, St. Petersburg, and then Yekaterinburg is number 3. It's about million and a change, 1.1, something like that of population. And then there is kind of like a backup facility here to the south, where put it like is with orange color. It's called Chelyabinsk Tractor Factory, so CHTZ in short. And this used to be actually called Tank City during World War II, and that's where a lot of Soviet tanks were produced. About 20% of them were made here. And then there's obviously here as well. So the sort of difference between two facilities is that the one in Nizhny Tagil is brought to a state-of-the-art situation, versus the one in Chelyabinsk is in pretty bad shape. So it's in a way kind of like a backup if something happens here, or there's a need for more extra that this one cannot handle, even though this is actually the largest tank producing facility definitely in Europe and probably in the world. So just to give you a scale of this, and it's kind of like probably was made with the idea of making tanks like sausages. So let's actually look at like how it actually looks. You can even see from the pictures, it looks pretty in good shape for the manufacturing facility. It's not in everything looks kind of like pretty well maintained and so on. And then you can see that they actively manufacturing tanks. And this is pictures not from like 20 years old or 10 years old. This pictures from like 3-4 years old, from like 17, 18, that time frame. So, and then you can even see here Armata, which is made there as well. We don't know why they have this Su-100. This is actually World War II. Self-propelled, not howitzer, but self-propelled cannon, I guess that's probably the right word to describe it. So as you can see, they actively manufacturing, and today there was news that Russian this Ural Vagon Zavod shipped T-90 tanks to the Russian army that were actually spotted and actively used in Ukraine, and one of them was destroyed by Ukrainian army near Kharkiv recently. So then let's now actually look at this Terminator and what it is, and just kind of try to make understand if it's a game changer weapon or this is just another weapon that's unclear what it is. So this is the picture. This is actually from the video. They were spotted today in Donbass. About like 5 or 7 of them. They were spotted in a column going somewhere there. So what it is in a simple sort of explanation, it's basically a hull of a T-72. Then they remove the turret, and then they put this kind of system where they have 2 30 millimeter guns, then 4 rockets, and then they also have automatic grenade launchers. So two of them. So this is one, this is second one. So this sort of device was in development since 80s, since the Soviet time, and then Russia only accepted it in 2018. And what we know is that at most 10 of them, maybe 20 of them were manufactured. So this is really extremely small scale, small scale, and this is probably this 5 or 7 units that were spotted in Donbass is essentially probably like half of them that's available to the Russian army. And so in general, it's kind of like experimental device. Nobody really knows what to use it for. So the idea was like, okay, we have so many tanks, and so let's try to experiment with that. So let's remove the turret and let's do something to support infantry. So that's kind of like the idea. It's still kind of like it's the way the Russian side is looking at it. Okay, we're gonna figure out on the battlefield what's the best application for this device. So that's the idea. But from what it has, it's very clear that it's designed to suppress opposing infantry. So in a way, you can kind of think of this as very expensive, BMP-2 or BMP-3, except it has two guns instead of one, and it has this automatic grenade launchers. But essentially, it's a very expensive, heavily armored version of that. So on its own, it's probably dead at that end, and it's not very useful. It has some niche applications for sure, and it's obviously better than BMP-1, 2, or 3 in terms of it's very heavily armored. But the only reason it sort of made sense is because there is a lot of T-72s from the Soviet time that they were built. And essentially what you do, you're getting the free hull, so you don't need to do anything. You just, you do some small repairs, upgrades, but it's a very small cost. So all you need to do is just install this new turret, right? And that's it essentially, which definitely costs a lot less than let's say the cost of the whole device. So basically, you having most of the device for free, and then you just need to pay for the turret. So it kind of makes sense, like just from that perspective, right? So in a way, it's kind of like bad investment, but it makes sense because you have so many unused tanks, and you just kind of try. If you want to try to experiment and see what happens out of it, then it has its place on the battlefield for sure. It's definitely better than BMP-1, 2, or 3, right, in terms of support of the infantry, or even support for tanks when they want to go and suppress infantry or enemy infantry and so on. But there's obviously also very weak spots here. You can see that this is sighting devices one, and then there's another one, right? And so what we actually learn, this is, and actually T-72 or T-90, it has only one sighting device. It's like a major device there. And so what happened is actually Ukrainian army found out by actually, shooting in them, and that was you can hit this sighting device with anti-material rifle, like 12.7 millimeter or 14.5, and then the whole tank becomes basically blind, totally blind. And so what you effectively getting is you capturing entire tank in sort of call it unharmed condition. The only thing you need to do is just replace this sighting device, and that happened actually to Russian tanks couple times, and Ukrainian side captured couple of Russian tanks that way. So so this is probably the same kind of flow is here. You're hitting here and here, and it's essentially blind and mostly useless from a sighting perspective, because you can see that the driver can still see, but essentially it's essentially blind machine, right? And it's worse in the case of tank because it's only one. So and then what happens, what even worse, which is clear engineering flaw in the design, is that like in order to repair this, you actually need to send it back to the manufacturing facility where they need to replace the whole thing. So in other words, it's not easily replaceable, repairable in the field. Like for example, with T-64 that Ukrainian army is using, you can just replace the glasses, right? In the field, and it's ready to go. You need to send it back to the manufacturing facility. With this, they need to go back to the manufacturing facility, and they need to be like, there's kind of like a serious repair there. So overall, this is, so going back to the Terminator, it's nothing game changing at all. If it's used wisely, it could be painful for Ukrainian side, but it's, as we mentioned, Russian army probably at most has 20 of them, so it's easily sort of destroyable relatively, and there are tools in disposal of Ukrainian infantry to destroy them, such as javelins and laws in Panzerfaust 3. So there are plenty of tools, weapons to neutralize this threat. And two 30 millimeter guns are obviously sort of painful, but it's more like to suppress infantry fire. So if you kind of, if you're clever about it, you can kind of survive. So we don't see it as like something that's like, oh my God, this is going to be the end of Ukrainian defense or anything. This is just another device, and largely, in our opinion, it's a poor investment overall, as if we were to evaluate this device. Then there was actually another question from other viewer is, what's going on, why the Russian infantry or the Russian army is trying to buy UAVs, and people in Russia collecting money to buy UAVs, because we said that they have Orlan 10, which is decent UAV, given that it was introduced about 15 years ago or 14 years ago, and it does its job. It's nothing. It's cheap, and that's another, cheap in the way that the airplane is cheap, right? The equipment is not cheap, but it does its job, right? And organizationally, it's structured very well. So that's where the whole the answer to that question is that Orlan 10 is dedicated to artillery unit, right? So it's embedded in artillery unit. So in other words, nobody else can use it. And the problem in the Russian army is that apparently it's like a silo, right? So all information stays within the artillery unit, and it's not being shared with infantry, right? So it just stays there, dies there, and infantry is blind. So there is not much use for infantry, and then they need something that's more tactical, right? They don't need this huge device that can circulate in the air for whatever 16 hours or whatever it can do, 10 16 hours. They really need I need to fly to the next building and see what's going on there, right? So like your typical kind of like commercial drones, and so that's what they don't have at all. Like Russian army doesn't buy them, And that's a very painful, especially was very painful at the beginning for the Russian infantry because they didn't have that at all. And then Ukrainian infantry had it not because of the Ukrainian government, because they don't buy it either. It's being supplied by Ukrainian population. So there is a huge drive inside of Ukraine where people donate money. They they buy them, and then like volunteers who they supply those drones to the units on the front line, and it's a sort of big deal in Ukraine. And in general, Ukrainian army is probably, we think, up to 50% financed by the direct support from Ukrainian population. That's like something that's totally different from, let's say, Russian army, where it's very limited, that people general population support is not there relative to what it is in Ukraine. It's a huge movement. It's everybody donates, and there is strong support and direct support. So basically, it doesn't go through the top of the unit; it goes straight to soldiers, right? So they have like direct sort of line with people who collect money, who buy the stuff, and they supply directly. So this is a very quick reaction time, and that's a big advantage for Ukrainian army in this way, right? There is obviously negative side to it. There is a lot of fraud happening when people collect, and they do something else with it, but it's still the benefits significantly outweigh this negative overall. And so Ukrainian army, in this Ukrainian infantry specifically, on a tactical level, was better equipped from the very beginning relative to the Russian infantry. To some extent, that advantage is somewhat mitigated, not completely. It's still better on Ukrainian side because we see drive from Russian sort of top, or from Russian, call it oligarchs, who go and buy those DJI drones from China, but it's still, like, let's say, a lot less than what Ukrainian infantry gets. And then the way it works with Ukrainian artillery is they are supported by this kind of commercial drones, but those commercial drones, by their engineering, by their design, are not made for artillery, because artillery need is very different from infantry need. It's in a way, kind of two different worlds. And it's better when they communicate, but from what we're seeing, it's very clear silos in the Russian army, and they don't even sort of kind of talk to each other, and that's a huge negative for the Russian army. And in Ukrainian army, it's much more flexible. So in a way, Ukrainian army is the advantage of it is it's much more flexible at the sort of grassroots level, right? The higher you go up in Ukrainian army, the more it looks like a Russian army. And then together they look exactly as a Soviet army, right? At the general level, it's a total, two twins, basically, two Soviet twins. But on the grassroots level, Ukrainian army in this way much more advanced, because it's much more flexible, fluid, and much more entrepreneurial in this way. So hopefully this explains the situation with why there is such a cry in Russia, specifically among Russian infantry, asking like, hey, give us drones, because they don't have anything, and they getting they suffer heavy casualties because they don't have it, and Ukrainian side has it. So that's hopefully answers that question. Now let's actually do a walk through the front line, and as always, we're gonna do in a clockwise fashion. We're gonna start with Kharkiv, and let's see what's going on there. So there is no new reported progress by Ukrainian side. So there's still kind of bridgehead still being controlled by the Russian side. We don't know if it's because, let's say, 72nd or 92nd. Well, we don't think 92nd left. We think that they are kind of like glued to defend Kharkiv, because militia brigades that we have here, 127 and 113, they don't have any heavy weapons, so they would not be able to withstand any like strong regular Russian unit attack. For example, any from tank regiment, or even like regular mechanized brigade. So they might be able to sort of defend against, let's say, Navy infantry or airborne unit, which is somewhat more like a light infantry, but definitely stronger than Ukrainian militia brigade. But they will not be able to withstand any like regular Russian mechanized brigade. So for that reason, this 92nd Brigade here will always stay here, because Kharkiv is a very important center. It's actually extremely important, and in terms of it's a big industrial facility, and it's also big facility for call it advanced technical manufacturing, right? In Ukraine. So the loss would be very extremely painful for Ukraine, and in a way would significantly undermine viability of Ukraine as a country, and its ability in the future to withstand to Russia, basically. So we think for that reason, 92nd is probably going to be here for, call it, forever. It's possible that 72nd was pulled out of here and brought to either Severodonetsk area or to Izyum bridgehead, but we don't have confirmation. We're just seeing that there's no more pressure here, from as strong pressure as it used to be from Ukrainian side, and attempts to drive the remaining Russian troops from here. There was another question from a viewer: is what's going on here? There seems to be like a small Ukrainian bridgehead here. Yes, correct. There is a small Ukrainian bridgehead here near Chuguyev. And this is part of that drive about early from, I think it was early April, when Ukrainian Army 92nd Brigade hit towards Chuguyev, and they managed to actually get on the other side. We don't know all of the details. All we know that they managed to capture bridgehead here, because again, it was at that time we probably didn't realize it was just screening, like Russian third-rated screening troops here, and that's probably what was the result why they managed to capture bridgehead here. Because from our understanding, bridge here in Chuguyev was blown up by retreating Russian troops, but we as well, it's not 100%. Confirmed information. So and then if we look, let's actually move south and look at the Izyum bridgehead, and maybe we can actually touch base a little bit on this big picture here. So what happened here when Russian troops were advancing? And specifically on Kharkiv, they kind of didn't clear this whole corner. It was kind of gray area, basically. It wasn't captured by Russians and barely controlled by Ukrainian troops, because they didn't have enough troops to control. So it was probably more like a reconnaissance units here in this area. So that also why Ukrainian side then, when the Russian troops start to really kind of pull out, that they managed to kind of come from here and establish this bridgehead near Chuguyev. So like we don't have full clear picture of how it was kind of created, but just for everyone's understanding, this whole area is more or less at this point kind of controlled by Ukrainian army, this corner here. So Balaklia is controlled by the Russian troops, and it's kind of like kind of goes like this, and then it goes to Izyum bridgehead. So okay, let's now go back to Izyum bridgehead. This is just like very bird's eye view on this, and it's more like a schematic to just give you understanding and feeling of the distribution of the resources and power and how everything is. So this is Izyum bridgehead here. Though this mechanized brigades are main sort of working horse right now, because this were units here from the very beginning, and they are, they suffered enough casualties not to be able to continue offensive, basically, in our opinion, because we don't see them anymore actively fighting here. It's mostly these 4 brigades. And even right now, these brigades essentially not able to do major advances, except for that Dovgenke, which was kind of like semi-encircled by itself. This is Lyman bridgehead, which is still controlled by Ukrainian army, except we kind of need to update it. It was split into two halves. This bigger one centered around town Lyman, and then the smaller one that's like centered around like villages there and just generally in the forest there. So again, no changes here. The same front line. This is this village of Dovhinke that was controlled by Ukrainian army, was heavily shelled with artillery and looked like a like World War One, like moon landscape here. So it was just too much sort of pressure, and Ukrainian side decided to withdraw. It's probably nothing critical. It probably was good stronghold, but at the same time, it's you wanna sort of kind of save yourself for the next for the next battle if you cannot withstand to the intense shelling there. So the biggest change is actually here on this Lyman bridgehead. So as you can see, it was split into two halves. The smaller one, which let's say centered around town Svyatohirsk here. It's very tiny town, probably like 10, maybe 15,000 people. And then the larger portion is centered around town Lyman here. It's about 23,000 people here, plus minus. Before the war, obviously. Right now, it's probably half that. So that's the situation. This is obviously not great development, and it's usually a sign that of impending failure of the defense. That at least in this case, Ukrainian side can safely withdraw on the other side because they have the major withdrawal routes here, so there shouldn't be a problem. The situation in Lyman is a little bit more difficult in the way that Russian troops also realize that they can cut off main pass for retreat, which, as you can see, goes through here. So if they attack and then they capture this village of Stary Caravan, they can technically cut off this Ukrainian troops here. So this needs to be watched, and hopefully Ukrainian side realizes that they need to withdraw in time and not to have another Mariupol or something like that. So that's the situation in this Izyum and / Lyman bridgehead. And just for those who are new, the importance of this of Izyum bridgehead specifically is that let's say it is still potentially possible. It's attempt of the Russian army to cut off Ukrainian troops here in Donbass salient. Basically, the idea is that they breaks through Ukrainian front line and go south, and then there is another group of the Russian army that comes from the south going north. They meet somewhere, let's say around Pokrovsk, and this whole group of Ukrainian army is encircled here and obviously destroyed. Which would be fatal blow to Ukraine's ability to defend itself, because as you can see, there is a huge number of Ukrainian troops here, right? We probably would say it's like close to 50% of Ukrainian army is here, probably even more than 50. But based on what's going on so far, what's been happening past months and a half, in our opinion, chances of that happening are close to zero. We never say zero, but it's close to zero, because Russian troops are exhausted. They don't have enough sort of power, not enough fresh units to break through and actually complete that encirclement. Not to mention that worst case scenario, Ukrainian troops can withdraw towards west of this sort of intended encirclement line. So for that reason, Russian side is now focused on trying to encircle Ukrainian troops in this what we call Severodonetsk salient. So, and let's actually have a look at it. So they tried again. If you want to encircle, you kind of creating two pincers, right? One from one side, another one, and in this case it's like northern pincer. This was here. This were attempts to create northern pincer, which were successfully repelled by Ukrainian army with heavy losses to Ukraine to the Russian side. And so from that time, they're not trying to create new bridgeheads here. So we cannot say it's quiet, but it's stable. Let's say this: the front line is stable here in the north. Where the Russian army is still having enough resources to continue attacks is here in the south, where they had success in Popasna, and then they expanded on that. They captured village Alexandropilya, and they were stopped on the outskirts of Kamyshevacha. So at this point, this is still stable. They didn't manage to capture this. Then, after they were stopped there, then they decided, okay, let's attack west, and they made some progress, and quite a bit of progress in towards west. They were finally stopped here on the border of Donetsk and Luhansk region. So, and then they also they also hit south, and they captured this village Novozvanivka. So they kind of like expanded in like north, west, and then south, and basically kind of protecting their the town of Popasna essentially, and kind of creating more opportunities for themselves to continue this attempt to encircle Ukrainian troops. At this point, we don't think that just southern pincer will be able to do that. It is still very, very difficult situation, and it's obviously that 24th Brigade is not enough to stop these 3 units that we are aware here. Potentially there's more. So it's very clear there is a need for some reinforcement in this area. We're not aware if there is anything brought in here. Then also what Russian side tried to do today, but wasn't successful, they tried to attack from Novozvanivka straight west to basically protect the flank of this group that was kind of creating salient here. But that attack was repelled. So let's actually move a little bit more south. So we have, and then another important consideration here is there is this town Bakhmut, and this road is kind of like a main supply road for all of these units in this area, right? So, I mean, you can use like kind of smaller roads, but you obviously prefer to use major, like, big, like wide roads and all that's like better paved road in better condition if you can. And so this is the main road. It's called like a artery of logistical artery for this whole Ukrainian group, and obviously Russian side understands it. And this whole road around this stretch is under almost constant Russian artillery shelling. So this is what's going on here, and it obviously makes it more more difficult, more complicated. But in the end, it's Ukrainian troops are still being supplied because there are a lot of small, kind of like a field roads that you can use, and obviously you cannot shell everything. So they're still okay, but it's more difficult situation, let's put it this way. So let's move a little bit now towards south so we can see a little bit better the situation around Popasna. So this is, we discussed this, and this is where Russian side attacks towards west from Novozvanivka, but was repelled. So that's kind of situation here. In general, it's still very difficult situation, and that's the only, would say, the most critical situation on the entire front line right now for Ukraine. The rest is more or less kind of stable or in okay shape. Not great, but at least it's not in sort of imminent danger situation. Now we're gonna go and we're gonna skip this section because there is not much going on right now there, where the 30th Brigade is defending, and we're gonna go towards straight west of Donetsk, because the Russian troops also made some progress here initial. So they captured here this Novobakhmutivka. They're trying to capture a village called New York, and they're attacking towards Avdiivka. And then we also and then another area of attack Marinka and Novomykhailivka. Here they have totally zero success. The only success where they had is around this Novobakhmutivka for like past several days, and then attack towards New York was not successful based on our information. Let's actually look at like sort of more zoomed in view. So you see this is they attacking along this road towards New York. And then what happened over past several days, today they didn't manage to gain any territory. But what happened is that Russian side attacked, captured Novobakhmutivka. Then they attacked south, captured Novosilka Druga, and then they attacked north. And we don't know if they fully captured Alexandropol or it's the fighting is going on outskirts or inside of the village. But basically, the front line is happening is centered around this small village here. So attacks here are straight on Avdiivka and on Kamenka are not successful. In addition, what is sort of a magnet for Russian forces is this road here that kind of goes from Donetsk, and I think it goes to Slavyansk. And they, for whatever reason, they really glued to it, and they're trying to fully capture this stretch of the road, even though it's not gonna, it doesn't lead to anywhere at this point because it's split by two sides. But probably because maybe it's giving better defensive position for the Russian, because it's a kind of like road is raised above the like general level of the ground, so maybe there's some potential kind of like advantage there. But beyond that, there is no advantage to controlling that road. So let's continue going south. Actually, we're gonna talk a little bit about surrender of Ukrainian defenders in Mariupol, because that's probably a better way of saying it, and you will understand now better what happened there. Is there were 2,500 defenders left at Azovstal. There were also 200, in addition on top of it, 200 sort of bodies or dead soldiers that were sort of kept there as well. Out of 2,500, the Azov is actually only 800. The rest is all kind of different sort of motley crew of different units. So it's obviously 36th Brigade was about 200 to 300 people. Then there is even from small sort of pieces from 53rd Brigade and even 54th Brigade. There is also like standalone battalion there, and there's also National Guards brigade, like small. They are smaller, so it's a 12th National Guards brigade. So that's what kind of creates 2,500. So it's all different units, and from what we understanding is, last night there were surrender of about slightly less than 300 soldiers, and out of them, most of them were wounded, and 55 of them were heavily wounded. So they were under difficult situation. And what happens is that with their soldiers who surrender is the Azov, members of the Azov, they being brought to Rostov on Don here, and they being interrogated by FSB, basically KGB and Russian military intelligence there. The wounded ones are being brought to, there is a town here called Novoazovsk, and they are being treated there. And then the remaining group is actually being brought to the prison that's south of Donetsk, and it's called Yelenovka. The Russian, we're saying it in the Russian way since it's under Russian control. So that's kind of like what's going on there. In terms of surrender, there are different sort of sides of the story, and it's still somewhat unclear. So Russian side is saying that it was unconditional surrender. Ukrainian side that it was conditional surrender, sort of to say, where there is a promise, obviously, to keep to keep lives of their prisoners of war, because before Russia was saying that they will kill all of their members of Azov and generally kill all of the defenders in Azovstal. So so that was the first condition, I guess. And then there was another condition that that these people will be exchanged for the Russian prisoners of war. So it's all, there are different sides of the story, and we will find out what happens as things will unfold. And we believe that there has to be some kind of agreement, otherwise defenders of Mariupol would not surrender. But at this point, we'll see when these things unfold, basically. So that's in a nutshell story of defenders of Mariupol. Obviously, it was probably they stayed there too long, in our opinion. Probably months and a half ago, they could have broke out pretty successfully, because we know that their smaller teams actually managed to kind of like literally not even break out, but just literally infiltrate through the Russian lines, because the density of troops was not high enough. And if you're kind of local and you know the area, you can kind of basically escape and get to Ukrainian front line, to the front line, and get on Ukrainian side. So we were aware of several groups of people who did that successfully without even losing anyone, without even getting into the fighting with the Russian forces. So that tells us that that's probably months and a half ago was still possible, and probably would have been better choice in terms of this defenders and joining Ukrainian army. And it's obviously one of the better units that Ukraine has, and there's the fact that they're going to be prisoners of war is definitely not the best application sort of their abilities, let's put it this way. So let's now look at the Parisian front line. As always, we split it into two halves. One is Zaporizhia here, eastern section, and then sort of western section and central section. So situation here is unchangeable in general. Ukrainian side tried to do this small-scale offensives, which all were failed and basically destroyed by Russian artillery. And so that's something that Ukrainian army has not mastered yet, and it's something that requires a lot more work, because offensive is much more difficult than defensive operation in general. So otherwise the situation is stable here. This is, if we look at this front line, it's centered around key strongholds. So the first one is Kamensk, then Orikhiv, Gulay-Pole, then Velika Novosilka, and then Vuhledar. So here, obviously, if the front line was kind of more straight line from Gulay-Pole to Novosilka, was actually even smaller, kind of like a smaller salient toward the Russian side. But then Russian side attacked here and created, their own sort of salient or wedge. And this was the part of the idea of southern pincer that they would eventually that would lead to encirclement of the Ukrainian troops in the Donbass salient. So this was where they attempted to build it, but this is at this point is very stable here. Let's continue. Let's look at the Kherson bridgehead and let's see what's happening here. So situation overall is stable, as you can see. For Russian side, this bridgehead is important. This is potentially for many reasons. First reason is it's a potential springboard for future. If, let's say, they get more resources, there is a full mobilization in Russia and they have resources, then this is obviously the launching pad for attacks towards A Kryvyi Rih here, which is a very important city, industrial city in Ukraine, then attacking Mykolaiv, and then down south Odessa, which is also very important port in Ukraine and just generally important city, and then linking with the Russian troops in Transnistria. So this is important for the future, right? So this is creating opportunity for the future, basically, at this point. And then at the same time, it has also very importance in terms of, we discussed this many times, this freshwater channel, right, that supplies Crimea. So for that reason, Russian side is digging in and preparing to defend this bridgehead at all costs. And also there are high-level Russian officials and members of the parliaments are coming here and clearly stating that this region will be annexed by Russia, and they already planning sort of full-scale integration. We spoke about that. They introducing Russian currency here. They introducing Russian educational switching, to Russian educational system. They trying to integrate factories and trying to integrate the economy of this region into Russian economy. So that's a situation here. So thanks for watching, and till tomorrow. Thanks again. Bye bye.